Strategy Show. I'm joined today by Adam Scher, Ship My Money. Adam, how are you doing? Are you looking forward to this massive three-game slate with the showdown afternoon game?
Yeah, doing pretty well. No, not excited about the slate, but it is nice. It's kind of nice, like the start time. Like you can have dinner and do whatever, and then like before you go to bed, just make lineups.
Yeah, it's like a turbo slate kind of with how
Yeah,
all these games are starting. Um, so if anybody's not aware and you're watching this and you haven't looked at the slate, I've got it pulled up right here on the osmo.com lineups page, which is a free link. I will post this link in the YouTube chat so you can bookmark this and use this as your lineups page. But the first game starts at 9:40 p.m. Eastern for the main slate on DraftKings, and then there's a couple other regular West Coast games, 10:10 Eastern in Seattle and San Diego. So we have ownership, we have all that good stuff. First thing we're gonna do is just, as we have been lately, just look at what happened in the DFS world yesterday. So I've got the a couple tournaments pulled up from yesterday, and you see some familiar names at the top. This was the $10 150 max right here. Um, but we see Tom up here. It just the big takeaway that I had from yesterday, and I was just talking to Adam before we got on here, is like even if you cash a third of your lineups, like almost in any tournament, you're probably not profiting with how top heavy the tournaments have been. They've gotten a little bit better as of late. Like this $10 has been good. I'd say like maybe 2 or 3 days of the week as far as payout structure, but it's really tough when you're cashing 50 out of your 150 and coming away with a loss, and 46 out of your 150. And in Adam's case, he had 72 out of 150 a few days ago and barely snuck out a profit. So, yeah, it's craziness that cashing doesn't really matter when you're chasing these top 25K, 50K, 100K prizes and you're max entering 150 lineups.
yeah, and it goes back to the point that we make a lot about. It's not about like being right in your lineups and getting a bunch of lineups into the money. It's about finding spots where the field can be wrong and being on the other side.
Yeah, exactly. So we're gonna take a look at 1-800 Eddie's lineups really quick, and maybe we can look at Adam's exposures as well. So this was the slate from yesterday. I've noticed that Eddie doesn't go super, like he plays a lot of the chalk pitching, at least recently, and he kind of stays with the field. So like Scherzer, Plesac, and Teheran, I think they were the three chalkiest options yesterday, and then he's really flat across the board on his hitters. So he had a bunch of 5K Alex Gordon, 26% there of a 5% owned player. I think he's just really sound with his exposures. He never really overexposes himself on a lot of these guys, which is something that I've found is really hard to do when you're ranking lineups outside of Excel, unless you or in Excel outside of Fantasy Cruncher, unless you somehow set up a way to track your exposures in that. Have you found that difficult, Adam? Like when you look back and see your exposures, have you found it like you're unhappy by being on 60% of certain hitters?
I mean, I get there. I'm not unhappy about it. It like it. Normally, I end up either spread out across pitchers and really concentrated on a couple of teams, or really concentrated on a couple of pitchers and spread out amongst like different offenses. And I'm perfectly fine with that. And it just kind of comes down to how the slate is. But yeah, I do find myself getting really concentrated on one end or the other in Excel.
Yeah. I think, yeah, so you're right here. Um, Cash 27 here. I'm trying to look at,
Lots of Toronto.
whoa. Yeah, so I didn't watch much baseball at all yesterday. I played the slate, but I didn't watch a game, not even a one pitch. But yeah, it looks like you took a pretty big stand with Toronto. Your four out of your top five hitters were Toronto players, all over 40%. So basically, just all in on Coors, which is basically what I was the entire weekend. It seemed
Yep.
like Coors was just underowned the entire weekend based on the top stack tool. So I was happy to be overweight, and it didn't really work out that well for me either. Um, let's see, anything else that's interesting from this tournament. I also have the what's this, the $60 pulled up, the one that Tom banked a couple weeks ago. Alex is near the top, but again, super top heavy payout structure. So he got 11th place, so almost a top 10, and he lost money while cashing over a third of his lineups. So crazy stuff, but he can obviously withstand that kind of variance. Brick, one of our friends up there in the top 4 per usual. Let's look at Alex's lineups here.
Yeah, I mean, back to your point about the swings, like I think that with DraftKings doing a good job recently of, like every other day running a tournament that has a good payout structure, if you're like on the fringe where your bankroll can't really afford the swings of these really top heavy PPs, just stay out of them and wait for the days where they do run the good payout structure, because it's just such a more profitable spot when they have 10% to first and a slow trickle down than when they're doing 30% to first and 50% to the top 5.
Yeah. Alex had a 3-3 stack sneak into his crunch yesterday, which is surprising. I think it was a 9-game slate. I was looking at some of his stuff for like 3 and 4 gamers, and a lot of the times he has at least a 4-3. So I'm surprised to see a 3-3 stack. It was a Coors, so Rockies, Blue Jays 3-3 with Scherzer and Plesac. And then I don't even know who the one-outs were, Schwarber and Kristen Stewart. So surprising that one made it in his final lineup rankings. But you see the standard 5-2, 5 naked, 4-3, 5-3, 4-4. The 6-2, of course, is including the pitcher, and lineup study does a really good job of identifying that. So you're not actually getting a 6-man stack with hitters, you're just including the pitcher in that. All right, I think that's good for now. We're going to look at this tournament from the other day where Eddie placed really well and kind of do a deep dive into his stuff at the end. Once we talk about these games. So in about 20 minutes from now, we will be looking at the last 3-game slate, which was last Thursday, and we'll see kind of what strategies some top players used. All right, did you look at the Angels-Cubs game at all?
No.
Okay. Do you have anything you want to talk about in the Angels and Cubs? It looks like 3.8 implied total for the Angels. Cam Bedrosian going up against John Lester. Have you played any Showdown MLB at all? Or do you have any thoughts on that?
No, actually, the first day of the NBA Finals was the first Showdown I've ever played. So I don't have any like strategy tips there. It's something I probably should start playing a little bit more. Josh and I were talking about that the other day, but I haven't played.
Yeah, I haven't played much at all. I don't like that they added a captain spot for MLB this season. I don't know that makes a ton of sense, but they do have a captain spot on DraftKings. I haven't played on FanDuel Yahoo. Do they have single game formats? I actually don't even know that. I'm gonna look right now.
Not sure.
They don't today. I don't know if they do in general, but they've obviously got a rake-free tournament. So if you guys want to get in on the rake-free tournament, it's only about 400 spots remaining. $3 tournament, 10 entry max, 0% management fee. You don't have to play against a bunch of the pros, and you have to hand build, or at least hand enter your lineups. You can still use Fantasy Cruncher. $500 top prize, looks like a much better payout structure with $250 going to second, $150 to third, $100 to fourth and fifth. So would suggest getting in on that. Use promo code AWESEMO to get up to $30 of Yahoo Sports rewards points. Yeah, I guess just looking at this quick, would you, as far as like plays you would want to make in a Showdown format, is there anything that sticks out to you quick, and then we can move on to the main
I think Trevor Cahill is supposed to be the follower, and he's still not great, but I think he has made some improvements recently. His release points gotten more consistent between his fastball and his curveball, which I have thought was a big issue for him earlier in the year. So maybe that's a spot where on a 1-game slate you can get some low ownership just because he's not starting the game and because he has been bad. But it's still not like it's a great matchup for him.
I feel like there has to be an edge in Showdown and just finding which relievers are probable to get some run if certain things transpire during the game. But yeah, if you have an open, what's that?
So Cahill would count as a reliever too, so I guess that's a good point.
Yeah. I don't know. I always found it too time consuming to try to figure out, like on a playoff slate last October, trying to figure out who was going to come in, and half the time I wasn't even right. So, and I was just playing the low dollar stuff. So I kind of gave up playing Showdown for a while there, but I will probably play this. I think DraftKings has some decent tournaments. Again, haven't looked over at FanDuel, but I'm sure there'll be some talk about this in the premium Slack. You can join that with promo code MLB Strategy, gets you 50% off your first month of Osmo.com premium. All right, let's go into the.
Hang on, I just pulled up the scoring. Do they not do extra points for relievers anymore? I don't think they do.
I don't think so. So there was a bunch of people complaining I saw on Twitter right as the season started because DraftKings kind of changed the format, like completely redid everything and just didn't really say anything. So people had to find out by themselves, and they didn't like take a poll. They didn't get any sort of consensus. They just changed the format, and people were unhappy about that. So they added a captain spot. I think they did do away with the extra points for relievers as well.
Yeah.
So
that obviously makes the KO less valuable, but yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if I'm a huge fan of the Showdown format over there, but I will probably play some and just use the projections on the site and see what happens. All right, let's go to the main slate again. Starts at 9:40 p.m. Eastern, just a 3-gamer, so it plays as more of a turbo slate, but you do have some decent main slate contests across the board. Again, get in that management free contest on Yahoo if you haven't already. Only a few hundred spots remaining, and those fill up really quick, as EMAC has reminded us time and time again. All right, Dodgers and Diamondbacks. We've got Walker Buehler going up against Robbie Ray. We'll pull up DraftKings pricing there. Looks like a 4.7 implied total for the Dodgers, 3.9 for the Diamondbacks. Is there anything you see here for pitching that you want to talk about? I'm sure we're going to use these guys quite a bit.
Yeah, especially Buehler for me. He's not the most consistent at this point, but he still has really good stuff. He still has the ability to pick up strikeouts, and Arizona's been a below-average team against right-handed pitching this year. Buehler only has a 23.8% strikeout percentage, but he has a low walk percentage. He has a pretty decent, 3.8 xFIP. I wouldn't have him as my number one pitcher here, but I do think that it's a pretty decent spot and price tag for him. On the other side for Ray, he has the highest strikeout percentage on the slate, which is really nice. He faces a left-handed heavy lineup. Depending on what lineup the Dodgers go with, it's either left-handed heavy or it's not as good hitters. But the thing about the Dodgers is that their lefties do hit left-handed pitching really well. So I still think it's a really it's a boom or a bust spot for Ray. A lot for me there will probably come down to his projected ownership. He still has a 12% walk percentage. He puts extra guys on base. He doesn't generally go deep in the games because he walks and strikes out so many hitters. So he certainly has his flaws, but reasonable price tag, and again, the highest strikeout percentage on the slate at 30% this season.
Yeah, I'm seeing some of these Dodgers bats also being super chalky, specifically Chris Taylor, assuming he's hitting up in the order. Bellinger might be a tough guy to fit in, so he might actually not be one of the top exposure players in a lot of Dodgers stacks. So I think that's where ranking lineups comes in handy here. Get some of those worse value players, but really good hitters in your lineup. And then I'm sure Kike Hernandez is probably going to be a popular. Yeah, he's above 30% right now. Ray coming in above 40. Same thing with Buehler on DraftKings. Looking over at Yahoo, it's similar with Ray coming in over 50. Buehler in the 40 to 50 range over there. So these guys are going to be two of the three chalkiest pitchers across the board tonight. For me, I think I side with Ray just because you get a little bit more leverage with some of these Dodgers bats being so chalky. So you kind of, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about pitcher leverage. Like, we know how hitter leverage works, but like Ray's the type of guy who could give up 2 solo home runs to a couple of these chalky Dodgers, and then it's not really going to matter what he does after that because it's likely those Dodgers bats just become in the nut lineup on a short slate like this. So obviously huge strikeout upside for both of these guys. I thought you weren't a Buehler guy though.
I'm not.
Okay, so just this slate. Yeah. I don't know. It's going to be tough to avoid either of these guys. I rarely get super different on this slate unless I'm, or on 3-gamers like this, unless I'm fading like the cheap chalk pitcher and stacking against him. But I would imagine a lot of these guys or both of these guys are in a ton of my lineups tonight. So can't really disagree with the ownership. What about the hitting here? Is there a team you would like to stack more often than the other?
I mean, I prefer the Dodgers just because of how much upside they have as a team. But one thing you mentioned too about, Ray potentially giving up, a home run or two on 3-game slates, I'm much less opposed to taking a hitter or two against pitchers, especially because, so I mean, obviously it negatively correlates but where you're just seeking out home runs, it's not that big of a deal. Like if your pitcher gives up 2 solo home runs and they're to, your 2 guys, you're losing like 5 points at pitcher. You're picking up 24 points still, like total. But it's so hard to differentiate your teams on a 3-game slate. And that's, one really easy way to do it without costing yourself, too much, without making like suboptimal plays, other than the fact that you have that little bit of negative correlation. So I don't mind doing that a little bit on slates this size.
Yeah, it was actually, now that you were saying that, I'm looking at Eddie's lineups from the other day on a 3-gamer. I don't see him using a bunch of hitters against his pitcher, or even one right now. I'm sure he did at some point, but that's a good point. That's obviously a setting. If you guys use Fantasy Cruncher, that's a setting you're going to have to change manually. You said 1 or 2 hitters. You wouldn't use like a 3 or 4 man stack or anything like that, right?
Yeah. Like I'm not stacking against my pitcher, but especially, I mean, if you have the time to go in and kind of really manipulate who the hitters are, like you would want to be taking, your high ISO hitters. Like you wouldn't want to be grabbing your singles hitters that are, if they score runs, it's because the team is just putting together a huge inning. So, if you have time to go in the cruncher and use like the limit options, those are the guys you'd want to be seeking out.
Right. So you wouldn't want to take like Will Smith, Verdugo, these kind of guys. You want to try to get a solo home run off your pitcher with like I don't even know, Bellinger or like Kike Hernandez, someone who hits lefties really, really, really well, or just a hitter that is a very good hitter.
Right.
Yeah, I'm going to look more into lineup study as the day goes on. Going to have a little bit of extra time, but I want to see which pros are actually using hitters against their pitcher on short slates like this. I think Alex even said on 4-game slates he might do that. So I'm going to look at those as the day goes on, and I'll report anything I find into the premium Slack. How about these Diamondbacks hitters? I know you said you like Buehler a lot, but short slate, is there anyone that sticks out to you?
Christian Walker, he's still cheap. He's got a ton of power. He, he's gone through slumps recently, but he seems to kind of be breaking out of that. But overall for the season, over a 200 ISO, he's been an above average hitter. And I was looking at, I don't care too much about StatCast leaderboards for hitters because, there's just so much variance in hitting. But it did stand out. I'm trying to find it the other day. I was looking at one of the like exit velocity leaderboards, and out of all hitters who have at least 50 batted ball events this season, Christian Yelich has the 8th highest percentage of balls hit at least 95 miles an hour. He's behind Gallo, Chu, Rendon, Bell, Yelich, Pham, Springer, and then it's Walker.
Wow.
Side note, Brandon Dixon is 9th, but he only has 52 batted balls.
Brandon Dixon?
Yeah.
Wow. Interesting. All right, cool. I like Walker quite a bit as well. He is just $11 on Yahoo. That's a guy that's for sure going to make his way into the cheat sheets as maybe a cash option, but for sure a GPP play based on Alex's rankings. He's actually projected out really, really well. So it looks like he's going to be a pretty good hitter. We know he has power. Do you think he's going to be a good hitter overall, like have a long career like that?
I as an Orioles fan, I kind of hope not.
Oh, was he from Baltimore?
Yeah, he was their like first round pick. I don't know,
Oof.
5 years ago.
Which terrible pitcher did they get for him?
No, they DFA'd him.
Ah, very good.
Yeah, because they have so many good hitters that they couldn't keep Christian Walker around.
Yeah, got to get rid of a young guy like Walker.
Yeah. I think they drafted him in like 2009 or something, and then he debuted like probably, 4 or 5 years ago.
Oh, okay. I didn't even realize it's been around that long. All right, cool. Let's go to the next game. We have the Astros and the Mariners. Corbin Martin going up against Wade LeBlanc. 5.1 implied total for the Astros. Paces the slate. And then 4.6 for the Mariners. Martin at $30 on Yahoo. Wade LeBlanc at $25. I think both of these guys are going to be more than in play over there. On DraftKings, they are 7,100 and 5K. So I'm probably going to be playing both of these guys as well. Well, I'll probably play all 6 pitchers in my 150. There's almost no doubt about that. I think I'm going to be heavier on Corbin Martin here. What about you?
Yeah, me too. He's not a pitcher that I totally buy into skill set wise, at least right now. I think he has the ability to be good in the future. He's clearly a highly ranked prospect, but he's also 23 years old, and I haven't been really impressed with him so far. He has had some tough matchups. Dominated Texas, which is an above average offense. Struggled with Boston, as you would expect. Struggled with the White Sox. Struggled with the Cubs. He just isn't doing anything yet that stands out to me, but Seattle does have strikeouts in their lineup. He does, at least have good stuff. I think that, even if he is going to be an inconsistent pitcher at this point in time, this is one of the better matchups that he's had so far, and he's cheap.
Yeah, 26% K right here for the Mariners. Obviously, you have a lot of power, but the strikeouts should be there if Corbin Martin can have a solid outing. So 7,100, I think, is a fine price for him. Has he had? Have you checked if he's had problems against specific candidates of hitter?
I can check real quick. So far he's only thrown 158 pitches to lefties, 138 to righties. Has a higher strikeout percentage against lefties, but that's skewed because the only start where he struck people out was against Texas.
Okay.
He's allowed a .095 expected ISO to lefties, 221 to righties. But again, it's really, really small sample sizes.
Yeah. Still working with small sample sizes,
yeah.
But
and a lot of the righties, he's whereas a lot of the lefties are coming from that Texas game, a lot of the righties are coming from the Red Sox game. So that doesn't help.
Yeah, that's fair. How about Wade LeBlanc for 5K? I don't know if he's fully stretched out. I haven't heard of him. I heard from him for a while. Actually, threw 85 pitches 5 or 6 days ago. So looks like he's fully stretched out. Does he just fall into the category of he's a 5K pitcher? You need the raw points here, and you're going to play him type of thing, even though it's a tough matchup against the Astros?
Yeah, I think he's fully stretched out. I don't think he's very good. So, the chances of him going deep into a game aren't that high. But, yeah, he's a 5K pitcher on a 3-game slate, so probably ends up in some lineups.
Yeah.
I would clearly much rather have the Astros, though.
Right. Are they the top stack on the slate for you? Looks like their pricing is really favorable on DraftKings. I wonder if they're even going to be a little bit over-owned once the top stack tool drops.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. But yeah, the Astros lineup right now is watered down with no Correa, no Springer, no Altuve. But you get some value there. Miles Straw probably leading off, offers a lot of speed. Alex Bregman is, of course, really good. Brantley can handle lefties. Chirinos has power. White has power. It's still not the worst lineup in the world, especially when you factor in the price discounts that you get.
For sure. And then are you looking to stack more against Martin if you're targeting against him? Or are you taking any one-offs that stick out to you, like Vogelbach or like Seager at 3,400?
Yeah, I'm curious to see what the ownership for Martin looks like. A lot of time on these 3-game slates, I end up really kind of more heavily weighting, leveraging against pitchers that are popular, just because, every offense gets ownership because there's only 6 of them. And so if I'm just trying to guess which offense scores the most runs, then I'm right. I'm still competing with a ton of people. Whereas, if I'm putting more of an emphasis on other people being wrong, it makes it easier to be towards the top. So I think my Seattle exposure will probably depend a lot on Corbin Martin's exposure or projected ownership. But putting that aside, I do like Seattle just because, Martin is still a question mark. They do have a lot of right-handed power. They're relatively inexpensive. Kind of like Haniger through Seager is a really affordably priced high upside stack. But then you also get, Malik Smith speed at the top. Narvaez is a catcher. So it's a really easy team to stack, I think, especially now that you don't have Jay Bruce in there taking up another outfield spot.
Yep. It looks like right now, as far as ownership goes, and this could obviously change, we've got a ton of time before lock, almost 12 hours before lock. So we'll get a handful of updates before you have to make any decisions. But Corbin Martin under 20%, LeBlanc under 15% right now. So if that changes your mind at all, I don't know if Martin is going to be a super popular option, relatively popular, just because we have Nola, Buehler, and Ray. And looking at some of these prices for good hitters, it looks like people are going to be able to make quality lineups, but quality lineups playing 2 out of the 3 of Buehler, Ray, and Nola. So that's probably going to make some of these super expensive hitters like Bellinger go a little bit underowned, and probably some of the guys on Philadelphia as well. So just keep that in the back of your mind. Anything more before we move on to our last game of the slate?
Nope, don't think so.
All right. Philadelphia and San Diego, we've got Aaron Nola going up against Eric Lauer, 4.1 implied total for the Phillies, 3.5 for the Padres. Nola at 9,600. He is right now the chalkiest pitcher on the slate by a pretty good margin on DraftKings. He is also the chalkiest pitcher by a smaller margin on Yahoo. Does he deserve this mega chalk that he's getting right now against San Diego?
Yeah, I mean, he's my number one guy. It's a right-handed heavy San Diego lineup with a lot of strikeouts. Nola's, reasonably priced. He's in the same. He's only a little bit more expensive than Ray against the Dodgers. He has been good against righties this year. Even though he has had some struggles overall, they've mostly been with lefties. Against righties, he's still struck out 25.5%. He's held them to a 119 ISO, 292 WOBA. There's a lot of power in the San Diego lineup. So if he's getting behind in counts or missing spots, he can get in trouble pretty quick. But assuming that he has, reasonably decent stuff by his standards, he should be able to, rack up some strikeouts here.
Are you worried at all about the 9.5% swinging strike rate and the barely above average chase rate at all?
No, because he's someone that still really stands out in called strike plus swinging strike percentage. And I think the reason for that is, he's got a really good curveball that kind of just freezes guys. He ranks 11th out of all starters that have thrown 750 pitches this season in called strike plus swinging strike percentage. So he's getting a lot of called strikes in addition to his swinging strikes. I'm looking now to see where he is in two strike percentage, because that's another one that I like to look at. Out of all pitchers that have thrown, let me just update this real quick. But yeah, as far as the called strike plus swinging strike, that's one reason that I've switched to looking at that more, is because swinging strike by itself can make you kind of miss some stuff. 750 out of all the starters that have thrown 750 pitches this season, 123 of them, he ranks 43rd in two strike percentage. So not as high on that leaderboard as he is on the called strike plus swinging strike. But I still think that the strikeout stuff's fine for him. And, overall, he's struck out 26.2% this year.
Yeah, so he's not really hurting in that category. I like what you said about Nola. I mean, he's just someone that I don't know how I really avoid on this slate. So while I probably have some Padres stacks against him just because they're going to grade out as good leverage plays when I start ranking stuff out.
Right.
I'll have a couple full stacks in my 150, but Nola's just a guy I really respect. It's a low run total, lowest on the slate for the Padres. But what about Eric Lauer at 7,300? I would think, actually, right now he is the least owned pitcher on the slate. Let's see where he's at. Lauer is, oh no, he's not. On Yahoo, actually, he's 21%. On DraftKings, he is 26%. Do you agree that Lauer should be 26% if Martin and LeBlanc are both below that?
LeBlanc, whatever. Martin, absolutely not. Martin just has better strikeout stuff than Eric Lauer does. He's got a nice strikeout matchup too. Martin, that is. So, if Lauer were low owned, like if Martin were like 30% and Lauer were like 10, then I could, obviously make the argument to get the Lauer in tournaments. But I think that Martin is the better tournament play. So the fact that he's lower owned just means that he's, in my opinion, a much better tournament play than Lauer.
Lauer gets no swings and misses, but it seems like he's chalk like once a month like this.
People like it. To me, it's because people weight median projections too much in their process. My baseline projections have Martin slightly ahead of Lauer anyway. But people when people just plug projections into an optimizer and go, and they don't account for anything else, a lot of times you're getting pitchers that just don't have the volatility that you want in tournaments. If you have, let's say you have Eric Lauer at 12.2 fantasy points and Corbin Martin at 11.9, you're going to get more Eric Lauer if you're just taking median projections. But if Corbin Martin has a bigger standard deviation than Lauer does, he's the guy that you would prefer in tournaments because he's giving you that higher ceiling at a very comparable projection. So I think that's, kind of where people go wrong. And the reason that a lot of times on slates, you'll see, you'll have like a grouping of cheap pitchers or mid-range pitchers, and you'll see like all the ownership go to someone like Eric Lauer, who doesn't really have upside. It's just because they project, half a point or a point better than everyone else, even though that doesn't really matter.
Yeah, that's a good point. I never really thought about it like that. That does make sense because he does project well, especially when he's pitching at home, even in a tough matchup like against Philadelphia. It's still a 4.1 implied total against him for a pitcher that's 7,300 that you're not going to have too much trouble fitting in. And people probably think they're being sneaky, getting away from the Nola Buehler Ray combo with one of their pitchers. But it looks like it's not going to be all that sneaky after all. So I'm really interested to see, before changing anything, if he pops up for me at all, because he's not really someone I want to play here. I like the Phillies stack quite a bit. So I'm looking at guys like Real Muto especially. He's the number one catcher on the slate, I think. But even guys lower in the lineup, like about Harper and Segura and McCutchen, but like I love Franco here for 3,600. I wish he wasn't batting eighth, but that's probably going to make him quite a bit lower owned than he should be. What do you think about the Phillies bats here?
I like their pricing on DraftKings. They're expensive, so I think that maybe you get them at a little bit lower ownership because it's going to be tough for people to justify, again, from a projection or an optimized standpoint, it's tough to get there. They're more reasonably priced on Yahoo, so I still like them, but you don't get that added potential for low ownership on some guys. It's tough to get to a 5,400 McCutchen at the same time as 5,200 Harper and 5,500 Hoskins, but if you're willing to go down to like a Corbin Martin or something, you can still make it work. Harper in particular, I would think is probably kind of like Bellinger. If people are stacking the Phillies, he might still be kind of the overlooked piece just because people don't want to pay up for a lefty and a lefty-lefty matchup. But Harper is, still perfectly fine. It would be better if Lauer were right-handed, but it's not the end of the world for Harper. So I think that the Phillies are a stack where if their ownership does come in as low as I'm thinking it probably will, for a 3-game slate at least, I would certainly have a lot of interest.
Yeah, I think they're going to be one of the under-owned teams. So I agree with you there.
The downside for Philadelphia is more so that San Diego does have a pretty good bullpen. Like if Lauer can get like 5-6 innings and it's like a 2-run game or something like that, there's a really good chance that Philly's just not doing anything from that point forward.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, anything more you want to sum up the slate with? Any just general pieces of advice for like a 3-gamer like this, and then we'll take a look quick at the last 3-gamer we've had and then get out of here.
Yeah, just tons of volatility. So, don't be afraid to do weird things in your lineups. On bigger slates, I mention a lot that while ownership still matters, it's just like kind of one hitter can make you contrarian, and that's all you really need. With 6 offenses to choose from and people employing very similar stacking strategies to each other, you're just competing with tons of very, very similar lineups. So anything you can do off the board is, in my opinion, kind of just fair game here.
Yeah, even more variance. You're seeing like I've got the tournament from Thursday pulled up. You're seeing like 4 and 5 points separating 20, 30 spots in these top-heavy tournaments. So even more variance to a variance-based sport, and then top-heavy payout structure, of course, is going to make it even more difficult. So this was the day that I was referring to earlier that you cashed 72 of your 150, and you probably had like a 15%, 20% ROI maybe at most. So you got a top. So 13th was your best finish, 170 points, 194. This person actually kind of ran away with it. Micah J.
Oh yeah, I remember that slate.
Yeah, Eddie 1-800 Eddie, our guy, finished in the top 3. So I wanted to look at his exposures quick, and then I also have your exposures pulled up here to see if you guys were different on anything. Looks like Eddie was not on Coors much at all. You had 78% Dahl, 74% Story, and then you were heavy on Freeland, Tyler Beatty, and then Bryce, who I remember I had a ton of that day as
Oh
well.
yeah. This slate pissed me off because I really wanted to just like not roster a starting pitcher. I wanted to just go with like a 4K guy, but I didn't know, and actually still don't know how or if you can do that in Cruncher.
So
Like
you can't add players yet, which
right, yeah. So it was really frustrating watching. I think my second best lineup had Kyle Freeland with like -6 points, and it was just really frustrating because like I would have loved to have just like put some 4K guy in there and then just like stacked cores with every good hitter.
that's kind of amazing that you cashed 72 lineups with 68% of a pitcher who had -5.45 points. I mean, that just goes to show that bats win you GPPs. You just need the pitchers not to get blown up really on these short slates like this. And even if they do, you're still okay if they're super chalky. But Freeland was 25%, so it was an uphill battle for you, and you still came out with a nice profit there.
It did help that Taylor Clark was like 20% also.
Taylor Clark. Oh, was
Arizona guy got lit up also.
Yeah, -3 there. Neither you or Eddie was on him, it looks like, so you guys avoided that one. Did you use do you know if you used hitters against your pitcher in this slate at all?
Yeah, I definitely know because I used max 2 hitters, but then I forgot to change the setting for the night slate. So on the 6 gamer, I ended up having the same thing. and like I actually finished at the top of a couple of small tournaments, and so I had people tweeting me like, "So like I like looking at your lineups. Like, what was the reasoning on like having Moustakas and Grandal against Musgrove?" I was just like, "I'm an idiot and forgot to change Cruncher."
Sometimes it works out. Yeah, so I'm seeing right here, I believe St. Louis was going up against Philadelphia, so you had a couple Hudson teams with a Harper one-off against him, which is like exactly what you're trying to do. And it worked out. Hudson, almost 20 points. Harper, I think he had a couple doubles that game, maybe an RBI or something like that. But it does work out on the short slates, even though there is negative correlation. It's like the showdown in any sport. Like you can play stuff that's negatively correlated in a one-game sample or a short sample like this.
And I don't have numbers to back it up, but just kind of intuitively thinking through it, I would think that whatever negative correlation there is between like, taking, I know on this slate, you said I had 70% Freeland. I also had like 50% Christian Walker. So I had a lot of Christian Walker in Freeland lineups against Freeland. I would think that I would think that the negative correlation is very likely outweighed by the added contrarian aspect that it gives you in terms of, your chances of winning a tournament, because such a large percentage of the field just doesn't do it.
Yeah. So I've only used one hitter, but it looks like you had a ton of success using 2. Like your top 4 or 5 lineups all had hitters against your pitcher, it looks like. So Walker and Escobar against Freeland was your second best lineup. You had you also had Harper versus Dakota Hudson in that same lineup. So you had 3 hitters against your pitcher, and I don't know if there's a way to do this on lineup study, but just looking at combos of like 2 or 3 guys, I wonder if you can do that. You might be able to do that. I learned something new every single day using this tool. But yeah, I just doubt, like you said, there's just no way that a handful of people are using Hudson, 3 hitters against their pitcher in a single lineup. People just don't want to do that.
And one thing though that did about this slate stand out and made me more comfortable going with more hitters or setting it at 2 instead of 1, because normally I do 1. But I just knew I was going to get a lot of Kyle Freeland, and I knew that I wanted a lot of cores. So I didn't want to. Basically, I was like, okay, I hope Freeland gets me like 5 points, and cores goes off. So I didn't want to limit my Diamondbacks just because how bad the pitching was on the slate forced me onto a lot of Freeland.
Okay, so with this slate, would you back off? Would you do maybe just max 1 hitter because we have some good pitching options?
Yeah, I probably would go max 1 because there's no cores game on the slate. There's no great hitting conditions anywhere. I'm assuming the roof's going to be closed in Arizona.
Looks like it's going to be open.
Okay, well, that's odd.
But the totals are still low enough where maybe they do close it. Right now, I'm seeing it's open.
Yeah, I'm seeing it too. Yeah, so I mean, this one, it's not. There's no spot where I feel like I'm being forced onto a pitcher that I don't want, and I would really still rather prefer the hitters there. So I'll probably go with max 1, so that at worst I end up with 2 hitters against my pitcher in a lineup, but it would be against different pitchers.
All right, cool. I like it. I like it. So you guys got your 3-game slate breakdown from Adam and myself. I believe we will have a show tonight. It's to be determined what time it's going to be at. I believe it's going to be Josh, and it'll probably be more of a live before lock. I don't think there's going to be a deeper dive show, but we will update you on the schedule. We'll tweet it out or whatever when we figure out what is going to happen because of the nature of this weird day. Anything more you want to add before we head out of here, Adam?
I think that's it.
All right, get in that rake-free Yahoo tournament. We love playing over on Yahoo. As you guys know, don't have to compete with the pros. So go take advantage of a rake-free tournament. You're not going to find that anywhere else in the industry. Good luck tonight, guys.